Good morning. I would like to thank the Reverend Maddie C. Fontus for having me in her pulpit, and I would like to thank my worship associate, Kate English, and all the folks that have ensured this service would happen today. Friends, I want to say we have done it. We have made it through another summer while being in a pandemic. It seems like it was only a few weeks ago that summer was just beginning, and we were all gearing up for what we hoped would be a return to normal. For those of us who are vaccinated, we each were making summer plans again, making plans to connect with those friends and family that we hadn't seen in over a year and a half. We were making plans because everything seemed to be returning to some semblance of normalcy. There was no Delta variant. Only the possibilities of pool parties, family gatherings, Friday night dinners with friends, the Olympics, and Sunday morning post church mimosas. I don't know about all of you, but the Olympics this year meant something different for me. I think the Olympics felt like hope, like a tangible way to hold hope close to our bodies while in a world frothing with chaos. I remember as a youth that even in my household, the Olympics had been a big event. I remember having red, white, and blue outfits that we would wear at our family gatherings. I remember us gathering around the TV to watch as Florence Griffith Joyner, or FloJo, with her bronze skin and long nails, would stand like a black Wonder Woman and would run. She was so determined and so focused, and she would run fast. I remember her getting so much acclaim for setting world records as the world's fastest woman. And seeing her as a youth made the dream real. That someone who looked like us, the everyday Black woman, could compete on the world stage and dominate. As an adult, I think back on those times and wonder what the stress was like. I wonder how, in an age where there was no social media and no 24-hour media cycle, how did people cope? I know these days that may sound funny, but it took longer for people to learn about your successes and challenges back then. These athletes would have a more extended amount of time to celebrate before they would hear the harsh realities of public opinion. As an adult, I look at our athletes and other people with some notoriety to help us shape the culture of what it means to be a good human in the world. I remember leading up to this year's games, we were getting constant coverage, story updates about the rising stars and who could potentially compete on the world stage. And yet we would also get those lesser critical stories about some athletes who people wish would just end their careers already. This year's Olympic Games provided more than just an opportunity for hope. It showed us that Black women will help lead the way and that our mental health is more important than any damn job. Here are the three things I learned, and hopefully they will help you. So if you haven't done so already, grab a pen and paper and write this part down. 1, we are still in a pandemic. It's a reality that we may not like, but it's a reality all the same. And although we were ready for our next normal, we have to question ourselves and ask, are we prepared for the next normal? Are we ready for a life that continues with ongoing safety protections? And if you pay attention, that's a very different question. Two, we need to face the reality that two things can exist simultaneously. Work is necessary, and also that job doesn't care about us. The people might, but the job doesn't. When working, we are just another cog in the machine for large corporate bodies, and we are easy to replace. It is better that we love what we do and we do what we love. Lastly, and I think that this one probably could go without saying, but our mental health matters. I'm going to repeat this, and hopefully people write this down and underline it with ink. Our mental health matters. Our mental health matters. Why add stress and carry someone else's trauma? That is not why we are here in this world. So, how do we address this reality? We live in our next normal, and I envision that we may be like those before us when the flu vaccine happened. I'm sure there was a hesitation because of the unknown. But now here we are, and having to get the flu shot each year is a luxury. The next normal teaches us more about how we can relate to one another than what it is to try and scrutinize about the exact science of things. Our next normal is a reminder that wearing a mask is an act of radical love. Because whether you are vaccinated or not, you are showing the other person that you care enough about their health. You are indicating that you care enough about the other person's peace of mind. This next piece is going to be a hard truth. We must face the reality that two things can exist simultaneously. Work is a necessary part of life. We live in a society where money is the almighty ruler. And to be able to have nice things, we must work to make money to purchase those things. And I'm not saying that people cannot work for a great employer that shows them love and great value. But what I am saying is that more often than not, we do not realize that work is necessary and the job itself could care less if we were there or if someone else had our job. I think back on these situations and I think back to the Olympic Games. I remember a few weeks ago, the media was flooded with stories about how Serena Williams lost to Naomi Osaka. And during the press conference, Williams compassionately comes in, leaning into her and showing support when the crowd began to boo her. This was not the first time that William had lost a title to Osaka. Yet Osaka still received so much hate from the crowd. And it's funny to me because in those moments where the crowd were so willing to boo Osaka because she beat our champion, and in the same breath we forget that many non-fans of Williams and her sister had compared their physical looks to men to downplay who they were. The Williams sisters were constantly receiving some type of hate for excelling the way they did in tennis under the leadership of their father. Later, we begin to see a trend where Naomi Osaka declined speaking engagements. At first, saying it's illness, and then later admitting that it was illness and she didn't sign up for this part of the life. She didn't sign up for the earth shattering anxiety that builds before she must go out and speak to a room filled with journalists, who in most cases would pelt her with microaggression loaded, veiled questions and comments. And instead of the powers that be understanding that Osaka needed that time to recharge, they decided to charge her $15,000 for each missed appearance in accordance with their bylaws. Her job didn't love her, and it didn't show her compassion during this time. It was more upset that she would not promote tennis and the businesses in which she had endorsement deals. Can you imagine what it must be like to be a young athlete propelled to fame? You have gone up against one of your childhood heroines and won. And instead of the love and adoration you think you would get, you are bombarded with hate. This type of event happens so often that you debate leaving the sport. Can you imagine the strength and courage it must take to tell the entire world that you need to take a break for your mental health and wellness? It takes lots of courage to take a stance placing yourself first before corporate sponsorships and to stick with it. I think sometimes we forget that we are just a cog in a larger machine. We are doing our part to ensure that the company is running at capacity. But I ask you, what are we doing to ensure that we are working at our capacity, at our own mental and physical capacity? If you can think back for a moment, have you ever had a friend or coworker lose their job? How long did it take before the former employer replaced them? Did the business mourn the loss of the employee, or did it continue with business as usual? I think watching Naomi Osaka as she said no and placing her mental health and well being first is a lesson that we all need to heed. And lastly, again, I want to echo how important our mental health is to our survival. Our mental health matters. And if you have not caught the theme yet, then here is your sign. Your mental health matters. Our last story today is about Simone Biles, the acclaimed gymnast who had done years worth of work and training to get to the Olympics, only not to compete in some events because she got what folks commonly know is called the twisties. Biles was an interesting case to study because she was penalized for being the best. The Olympics punished her for creating and performing such acrobatic feats that would be considered dangerous. Yet she did them and could do them over and over without fail. But then comes that voice, that inner saboteur fed by all the criticism and pressure. And for such high achieving athletes, we have to remember that they are people like us, and they too can have themselves as their very worst enemy. According to Jack Dutton, a writer for Newsweek, the twisties is a mental block when an athlete loses their spatial awareness during an intense routine, which could lead to serious injuries. It is widely experienced by gymnasts performing dizzyingly quick routines, and many find it terrifying. So imagine, as a gymnast, you are preparing to do a stunt, and in your mind, you begin to doubt you can make a safe landing. Imagine that you push yourself and begin to do the stunt, and then while you are in midair, you lose all focus. You don't remember where any of the props are. You don't know if you are up or down. You lose all understanding of your body and where it is located in relation to the ground. And then you fall. You fall hard. Imagine what would happen if in your landing you fell the wrong way and landed on your neck. Or maybe landed the wrong way and impacted your knees. Any of this harm could change your life, end your career, and possibly end your life. I imagine that it is one of the many questions that ran through Miss Biles's head. And is this competition worth risking it all? The answer was no. And again, the establishment wanted to fine her for not showing up. I remember hate mail and hateful comments being sent her way. Random strangers out there making comments about her and her ability, and how dare she not show up to perform. I think some of us deal with these same types of feelings and attitudes every day, where we question ourselves because we want to ask for that time off, or we want to call in for a mental health day, and we doubt it. We suspect that the reasons we want to call in are not valid. We doubt that our well being is worth missing the work hours, but it is worth it. I think that my last point is that regardless of how much impact you have on your team, you are ultimately responsible. And our next normal has shown that we do not have to continue with business as usual to survive and thrive. Our next normal has demonstrated that we can create a life worth living that doesn't include overworking or overachieving. Our next normal has shown that we don't have to give people or our employees or employers, excuse me, every bit of what we have to show that we are good employees. Our next normal has demonstrated that we don't have to break our backs for gold when we can be just as satisfied with the bronze. Beloveds, I'm going to say that last line again. Our next normal has demonstrated that we don't have to break our backs going for gold when we can be just as satisfied with the bronze. Blessed be.